can you build scalability along with reliability without having to have constantly the meter running? And you can do that by using cloud technologies, cloud-based infrastructure providers. The key to this, though, is predictable costs. Because if you think about the vendor community, by and large is based on that older model, right? You buy this appliance, you put it in place, you own the appliance, et cetera, et cetera. Now what we're talking about are transportable licenses. We're talking about pay as you go and pay as you grow. Only pay for what you are using. Not every vendor is set up, from a business perspective to be able to provide that, but they're moving fast because that's in the best interest of their customers.
So I'd imagine that driving predictability and reliability in an enterprise is, let's say, the purview of the IT department. Who has to drive organizational change for digital transformation to happen? Does it have to come from the CEO's office? Can it be led by the CTO? Who's responsible for making sure, is it totally top down, or do you meet in the middle to make that organizational change? Who needs to be the driving force behind making sure these processes change?
Sure. Well, I think a real sea change has happened here. Now, not so long ago, we would point to the vice president of engineering to make these calls. And then what we saw over the last 10 years, 5 years was, the question of how does IT and IP and what we're using IT and IP for in other parts of the business, the back office, how do they have a role in what we're doing in terms of the content creation side of this? Because we clearly understand that model. We clearly understand the benefits of that model. Can those technologies be utilized for the people who are actually creating this content? And there's another cadre, of course, and that's the artist community, right? No one wants to impede the artist by, saying what applications you can or cannot use, right? But if that application performance is not impaired, and you can get the type of performance from IT, IP, cloud-based technologies, the artist doesn't suffer. The artist doesn't know the difference, right? And so this is where I'm going to do a commercial for you guys, right? Because the fact of the matter is that what you offer is you offer the performance as if, this storage was local to you, and the benefits of that with the price, performance, and frankly, savings from cloud-based storage, right? So the artist doesn't suffer because they're getting, the appropriate performance. They're not having to, go through undue latency requirements. The people writing the check are not faced with another, request for, okay, we need more NAS on-prem, right? Whereas, what LucidLink is doing is you're providing that performance based on, much more affordable and scalable cloud object storage. So how is this being driven, is what you started with. And I think it's driven by what are the appropriate ways that we can homogenize our technology usage. It's going to be IT, it's going to be IP centric. And frankly, that infrastructure, some of it might have to be on-prem, okay, because of workloads, frame rates, HDR.
Legacy applications that just can't be ported. Yep.
Cloud-based.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that you get the option of picking and choosing based on not compromising performance. You get your reliability. And the last thing we haven't touched upon is, so why do we work together, right? We work together in the benefit of the customer base because we're bringing predictive, by having the cloud infrastructures, your technology, you've got that reliability, okay, and you've got the scalability. So how do we address the predictability factor? Okay, so here's what people don't like about hyperscalers and cloud-based, infrastructure providers. They don't like the unpredictable costs at the end of the month, right? Primarily, the egress charges, usage, the wrong tier of storage being consumed when you're not accessing it as much as, the higher cost tier of storage. I mean, there are horror stories out there of people who are consuming flash-based storage, for content they haven't touched in a month. So what we've done together, working together, is we've put in place zero egress cost, very predictable, okay? And then utilizing the smart tier technology of cloud object storage, you're able to utilize the appropriate tier of storage for their appropriate access patterns that you're using. Those are the things that you need to bring to the market for people to, one, make the decision and to feel good about not compromising the artist in terms of reliability, performance, and not compromising the bottom line in terms of, the cost structure.
So do the artists need to become experts in cloud, or can they just get on with the process of like making the world's most loved media?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is completely invisible to the artist, right? They're not interacting in any other way other than they interact today with the application. This is all happening invisibly to that experience. So, one of the questions becomes, well, who's going to manage and monitor this? Who's going to be the cloud experts and so forth? So, arguably, if you look at, the SMPTE engineering community, which is extremely strong, but it's also got a fairly limited amount of members, right? Now, if you look at, the IT professional community, it's a massive amount of people. And so really, the learning from each other, certainly it has to happen. That knowledge transfer has to happen. But in terms of, learning about cloud-based technologies at the artist level, not important, not needed.
They can use the same muscle memory and methodologies that they've always used to make their media without breaking that mental model of how to do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the end, what the artist really cares about is this application responsive to how fast I can think and create and manipulate? And if there's a lag, I mean, what happens if there's a lag and you're using an application for, a microsecond or a split second, you lose the creative piece of it, right? And you're like, okay, I'm waiting. I mean, you see this today, right? You're watching a video, you're waiting for the thing to cache, and you're like, dude, I'm leaving your website, right? It's the same with artists, they want to be able to manipulate things and have it react and be responsive. You kill that response, you kill that that experience, and it's a very negative, approach. And then suddenly, what happens? And you've seen this a million times. People are like, I'm not going to use that application. I'm not, I want to go back to the on-prem implementation, and then everything collapses. So you got to address those things right up front.
So what happens when you start connecting people through these services, and all of a sudden you've got an editor in Dubai and a visual effects artist in LA and a sound guy in Nashville, and they're all working on these projects together? What change does that enable for an organization? Like, what's next for them? Why are we doing this?
Well, I think, anyone who's had to commute from Burbank to Santa Monica can answer the question, right? It takes forever, right? And there has to be a better way, so wouldn't you like to be, first of all, wouldn't you like to tap into the best artists in the world who you want to work on your project? Of course you would, right? And why do you need people to suddenly, do a 2-3 hour commute, losing all of that productive time, right? So those things are, that train has kind of already been set in motion. What has to happen, of course, is the technology be behind this, so that the interactivity that they're used to, the responsiveness, the low latencies are in place, so that they can stay where they are location-wise, and that all of constituents who are working together on a project are not suffering from waiting for the download, or waiting for the update, or waiting for the model to be turned because the director is wanting to see the other side of something.
Is all this relevant just to, like, say, mid-market and enterprise, or can this scale down to smaller post-production facilities or freelancers or small creative teams? Do they reap any benefits of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are multiple stories of very large visual effects companies that are now no longer in business. And why aren't they in business? Well, they're not in business because they had to buy purpose-built, equipment. They got the contract for, N number of movies. Okay. You've started to see major studios go from 21 films a year to 9 to 6 to 4. So what happens to the equipment? That's a sunk fixed cost. It's sold off for, pennies on the dollar. So that model doesn't work. So embracing the cloud, leasing applications, SaaS essentially, right, makes sense when you're starting a company. For the smaller company, it's the same problem, right? Because here's what's great about a small company. You buy a workstation, you buy great monitoring, you buy you buy your storage. It's all, you get all your signal inputs, et cetera. It's all self-run. It's one project at a time, right? And then you get successful and you put a couple of more workstations and a few more people, right? And then the client says, we need to go to 4K, right? And so everything gets upped, right? And then at some point you turn around and now you're in the infrastructure business. And what happens when your client base pushes off the budgets, or you have a pandemic, or you have, again, you're having to lay off people because you can't keep it running. So small companies are really designed to embrace the cloud and to use and pay for only what they use. It's the smart way to build a company now.
So as people walk around the show floor and they get a read of all the technologies that are being introduced here, when they get back to their office, if you were in their shoes, what would be how could you encapsulate what the trend is right now in media and entertainment content creation? What do I need to know right now? Not like future state, but what do I need to know right now?
Yeah, I know what you're all going to do, right? I already know. If you're already working with a vendor, right, and your hero applications, you're going to go to those booths. You're probably going to go to those booths first. What's new? What's the new stuff you're working on? In the back of your mind, you're thinking, is my investment safe? Did I make the right choice? And that's all natural. That's what you should be doing. You should be going to those vendors. You've already invested so heavily into them, not only in terms of your money, but in terms of, usage and your career based on those applications and those technologies. That's absolutely appropriate. The thing that I feel you should be doing, that I'm definitely doing, is go look for the companies that you've never heard of before. And if the signage doesn't exactly tell you what they do, go and try to figure it out, because it's going to be those companies that you haven't heard of before that are coming from a cloud native engineering mindset, that are already building for the cloud. They're not building for on-prem. They're not building for an appliance that you're going to put in your data center. They're already building for the cloud. And if they're doing something that's going to enable you to really grow the business in a unique way, or that saves you from buying in the same old way, that's something you should be looking for, right? I mean, that's the attraction with you guys, right? You've got a value proposition that enables me to not have to buy more NAS because I've got performance from, more economical cloud-based storage. I'm set up to work in the cloud, okay? And so now what can I do? Now I can start to work at higher resolutions without investing in all of the technology that I need on-prem. That's enabling. So, I think the takeaway from this show, in my opinion, is the companies that have grown up with a cloud native mindset, looking to solve problems that have been solved in a more on-prem centric way, and are bringing all of the benefits that you find from hyperscaler mindsets into this industry. And that's what you're going to see. You're seeing new names that you've never seen exhibit here before. They're doing a lot of AI stuff. They're doing a lot of machine learning stuff. They're doing things that, even 10 years ago were not really on the radar. And I think you're also going to see a lot of, automatic content indexing, content derivation. What is actually this file? What's in it?
That's my next question, reading my mind. So you've got all this data now stored in a cloud, in a central data lake, if you will. Now you can layer on services, cloud-enabled services, to derive meaning from that data, even if it's camera assets, utilizing the metadata or other vision-based products. How can you extrapolate meaning out of that data in order to have you be more creative and make better editorial decisions? And I'm not saying the system assembles the edit for you, right? That's not possible. But how does it help you make better editorial decisions or be faster at what you do?
So let me answer the question, because if anybody knows me, they know I'm never going to answer the question with one answer. It'll all be 2 or 3 answers, right? So so you're the CMO here, right? Okay. Well, so what if you were the CMO of a enterprise organization and you were faced with 10 years of corporate videos of your senior staff, okay? And you wanted to find every time the CEO talked about a specific customer. Impossible, right? First of all the stuff's not digitized, right? It's on all this other stuff, tapes, drives, etc. First problem. Second problem, the amount of human work in terms of hours to grog through 1 hour, it's like an 8-to-1 ratio. So that's just a time and human capital problem. So the smart thing, and the technology is here now, you don't have to wait. Upon ingest of the content, apply speech-to-text algorithms to it. It's simple. It's a low-cost way of getting to that first basic thing. What's being said in this video? Once you know what's being said in the video, you can search on those words, search on the keywords, right? So now you can start to do automatic content curation, right? All the times that Adam said Lucid Link, they will all come up. And that lends itself to facial recognition, object recognition, logo recognition. And that lends itself to automated curation of highlights. And, we see this in the marketplace, automated sports curated highlights, right? That's a thing, it exists. But behind that are all these other technologies. So I firmly believe when you're digitizing content, you should be applying, a AI engine just to do basic speech to text. And that opens up a whole other amount of things to give you insight into the content.
And potentially other ways maybe to monetize that content, right? You're creating new monetization streams because you're creating new assets from that, or more accessible assets, or a new way to distribute that content other than linear television.
Listen, I'm a firm believer. One of the things, if you looked at my LinkedIn page, you'll see my quote. My quote is speeding the velocity of content to the consumer, right? To me, that's what it's about. It's about really efficient supply chains, digital media supply chains. So to your point, Adam, if you can reduce the amount of time knowing what you have and can compile it in a way that's valuable to the potential buyer, you're going to move that content out into the marketplace faster, right? Because we know that there's a very steep fall off, in terms of when people are actually really interested in content and purchasing it. And if its availability isn't within that 24-hour period, it really falls off steeply, 40, 60%. So you can't throw, unlimited people resources at it. You really have to use technology to help augment the staff.
I've got one more question for Tom, and then we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. Tom, what are you most excited about right now? You've laid out your vision, but what gets you most excited about what you're seeing in the space of cloud compute, cloud technologies, and M&E, that intersection of those two areas?
Well, I think because the cloud providers want to embrace you as customers, it's in their best interest to listen to the customer base and to provide reliable, predictable, it's those two words again, packaged services so that you can grow your business responsibly, right? So that if you have one customer, you're utilizing only the resources in a SaaS model so that you can properly budget and create a profit for yourself and grow your business, right? So that's what excites me, because that means that more people will start businesses. They'll be able to prosper in the business as they grow. The service provider, a cloud provider, they'll grow in terms of consumption, okay? And then you can responsibly grow the business without mortgaging the house. And those things excite me because it means more people will start businesses, and those businesses will not be beholden to some fixed, cost infrastructure that does not weather the storm. And there's always going to be a storm.
Creating opportunities for small business. Love it. So, questions from the audience. We've got a lot of folks here today. Any questions for Tom? Yes. What she has a microphone. Great.
Do you think cloud should be decentralized?
Could you repeat?
Do you think cloud should be decentralized?
I think that, so the question is, do we think that cloud should be decentralized? I think what we're seeing is that what I've heard from customers is the following. I want cloud providers to work together as opposed to working against each other. And so that's a real concern for the customers, right? And it's on all of the cloud providers to figure out a way, to be able to accomplish that without penalizing the user from moving across clouds. That's the first thing that I'm seeing as a real requirement, so they can have freedom of choice and to move things around. Because it's very infrequent that you're going to see a global organization standardize on one cloud provider. It's really difficult. It's not really going to happen, especially if you have legacy applications. So I think the decentralization and the ability to move workloads across clouds, but have single pane of glass viewability into it is huge.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Letta, should we do a couple of quick raffles while everybody's here? Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate
You're
your
welcome.
time. It's
You're
been an
welcome.
amazing experience working with you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
you.
you.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Tom. I hope everyone here at the booth and online enjoyed the show, and especially Adams. Okay, now let's do the